special warning to former President Donald Trump. A special grand jury will be seated, and the subpoenas are coming. That from Georgia's Fulton County DA, Fani Willis. She tells CNN that the criminal investigation will not be delayed by what she calls the former president's games.
She went on to knock down the notion that Trump can't be prosecuted for potential crimes committed during his time in office. CNN's Sarah Murray has more.
The Atlanta area district attorney investigating Donald Trump says as soon as she has a special grand jury seated in May, she'll start firing off subpoenas.
Most of them will probably start to come in a heavier flow, for lack of a better word, in June and later months. But we will certainly start to do some in May.
Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis says she isn't worried about Trump working to slow her probe into his efforts to overturn Georgia's election results in 2020.
Are you worried that former President Trump could somehow be able to avoid, delay, what's going on with your investigation?
No.
Why is that? What gives you that confidence?
This is a criminal investigation. We're not here playing a game. I plan to use the power of the law. We are all citizens. Mr. Trump, just as every other American citizen, is entitled to dignity. He's entitled to be treated fairly. He will be treated fairly in this jurisdiction, but I plan to do my job, and my job is to make sure that we get the evidence that gives us the truth. I'm not concerned at all about games to delay this.
And she cast doubt on whether Trump's oft-used argument that he can't be prosecuted for actions while president will protect him in Georgia.
I don't think that protection will prevent a prosecution if that becomes necessary in this state case.
Willis has already met with Trump's attorneys twice about her plans to move the investigation forward.
For instance, last calendar year I met with them and I assured them what I knew. We would not bring forth an indictment in the 2021 year. I met with them at the very end of 2021 to tell them that I would be moving forward, not necessarily with an indictment, but with the next step of an investigation.
Willis launched her investigation nearly a year ago, after an hour-long recording went public of Trump pressing Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger to find the votes for Trump to win Georgia.
All I want to do is this. I just want to find 11,780 votes, which is one more than we have, because we won the state.
Last month, in her request for a special grand jury, she told the court she had reasonable probability of criminal disruptions around the 2020 election.
And I have listened to that phone call, but also I have the benefit of also having talked to a lot of witnesses and probably having read more on this than most people would like to.
She's digging into Trump's actions as well as those of his allies, including former attorney Rudy Giuliani, former Chief of Staff Mark Meadows, and South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham, witnesses she may subpoena as part of her probe.
I imagine that we're going to be issuing subpoenas to a lot of people, and that all of them are not going to welcome our invitation to come speak with us.
She hopes to make a charging decision by the end of 2022. We sat down with Willis in an Atlanta hotel, as her office was under lockdown from a possible security threat at the Fulton County Courthouse. Willis was already on high alert after Trump took aim at her and other prosecutors during a rally.
I hope we are going to have in this country the biggest protest we have ever had in Washington, D.C., in New York, in Atlanta.
After those comments, Willis asked the FBI for help assessing potential security deficiencies and sharing intelligence on potential threats.
I don't want to pretend like I didn't hear what I heard. It would be just crazy for me to not pay attention to that. So I wanted to make sure that they were also paying attention.
Now, we also asked the district attorney when she's planning on talking to Brad Raffensperger, the Georgia Secretary of State, who's really at the center of this, whose call with Donald Trump set it all off. She said she knows what it's like to be in the middle of a campaign as Raffensperger is in the middle of his re-election. She said she's not going to try to get him to talk before the grand jury, before the May Republican primary here in Georgia, but she's certainly not going to hold off until the November midterms. Guys?
Sarah Murray, thanks so much. CNN Chief Legal Analyst Jeffrey Toobin is back with us. So, Jeffrey, you know the law. The president's on tape. He's saying he's a sitting president with all the powers of the office. He's saying to Georgia's premier election official, the Secretary of State, find me the votes, one more than necessary to overturn the state. And by the way, now we know that this was part of a broader mosaic of Trump attempts to overturn the election. What does the law say? What is the legal standard to establish that that was potentially criminal interference as opposed to just Donald Trump talking?
Well, Georgia has a law that really directly addresses this whole issue, which basically says
it is a crime to encourage election fraud. And the central issue in this is whether the president, the now former president, intended to have fraud committed. The defense in this case will be, if there is a case, is I was just acting in good faith. I wanted all the votes counted because I really believed I won. I acted in good faith. The question is, does this phone call and all the other evidence show that it was not a good faith attempt to count all the votes, but actually to encourage fraud? That's the heart of this question, at this case.
Well, to pick up on that, we've now for over a year have heard that phone call where the former president was asking to find that specific amount of votes. But what we heard from Fonnie Willis here was that she said she has read more and seen more than others have yet. What is the likelihood that some new information will be brought out to the public eye throughout this investigation?
You know, that really jumped out at me in Sarah's report, that comment from the district attorney, which is there's more than just the tape. And I think, you know, the audio tape is definitely incriminating. But I think some people believe that you just play the tape and Donald Trump will get convicted. There is absolutely no way a responsible prosecutor would act on the tape alone. But it does appear that, based on what the district attorney said, she is proceeding as if this is a full investigation of everything that went on in Georgia. And a lot of stuff went on in Georgia. For example, you know, the question of why and how the U.S. attorney, not the district attorney, the federal prosecutor in Atlanta, was forced out of office by the Trump administration in the middle of this effort to try to overturn the election. All of that is part of this investigation. And it looks like the district attorney, Ms. Willis, is operating in a methodical and fair way to make a fair decision about whether there's a criminal case here.
Jeffrey, is this solely focused on efforts in Georgia, or can the prosecution make an argument that other efforts to overturn the results, again, that have been revealed in a whole host of other investigations around the country, are relevant to this case, or does this have to be all about Georgia?
I think certainly any criminal case will have to be about Georgia. The Georgia statute speaks only of election fraud within Georgia. If there is compelling evidence of a pattern of behavior, perhaps they could bring that into a criminal case. But frankly, I think Ms. Willis has her work cut out for her just dealing with Georgia. There is, of course, the New York investigation, the federal investigation of January 6th. I don't imagine that Ms. Willis will wind up investigating in any serious way other states because there's plenty to look at here there in Georgia.
And as we heard from there, making some news that we could see subpoenas in May and more this summer. Jeffrey Toobin, thank you as always. We appreciate it.